Do or die politics and a predilection for being a bad loser. These are playing out in Osun State, if you ask me. Okay, what's the story? The story is that the Supreme Court has given a ceiling to the rumble in the jungle in Osun. Hear this. The Supreme Court says Senator Ademola Adeleke is the authentic candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the just concluded governorship elections there. But aspirant Prince Oyedotun Babayemi, also of the PDP, had gone to court for redress. He sought redress, and Justice Amina Augi said no. Prince Oyedotun Babayemi is not competent to challenge the outcome. And so what are we talking about, Jide? Our democracy is yoking under desperate politicians. We need help, don't you think?
Well, politicians, I'm happy that the judiciary always finds a way to teach the politician a lesson. That has to continue.
Yes.
That has to continue. And I expect that within our parties, they will be able to resolve some of these issues. It's not every issue that should go before the courts.
That's all.
Yeah.
It's not every issue. You're just wasting the time of the courts. There are tons of cases before our court, before the Supreme Court. Every little matter, these people can't even organize themselves and resolve minor issues.
You know, cases dating back to 2011 are still in court across the country.
What's going on? So, in this case, the parties to the dispute came together. They were trying to make peace, resolve this issue. Some have told me that, look, the Adeleke group were not really sincere in trying to make peace with Babayemi, that they were just literally kicking the can down the road, knowing that the matter has to be filed within the time ceiling that the law sets for it. When Babayemi saw that, look, these guys were just, are just wasting his time, he decided to go to court.
But outside the stipulated time?
That is, return to appeal. He decided to appeal at the level of the Supreme Court. But he filed the action 15 days after. What the law says is that you must file the action within 14 days. So when his own action of filing the appeal outside of the time ceiling effectively stripped the apex court of jurisdiction. That's why the apex court says, we lack jurisdiction. You know, just like the other day, some senior lawyers approached the Supreme Court and said, look, reverse yourself over a decision that you are taking. Reverse yourself. It's unconstitutional for the Supreme Court to reverse itself. So the Supreme Court simply said, look, we have no jurisdiction to reverse ourselves.
And you know, Jide,
we've not got the power.
Jurisdiction is key.
It's everything. It's everything. If you go before a court that has not got jurisdiction to entertain your matter, even if the court rules that President Buhari should open Nigeria's vault and deliver all the money that we have left to you,
it's
a nullity. It's a waste of time. It's just what the Yorubas will call a rewarder. You don't get anything in the end. You'll be looking at that money. So you mean you'll just be excited for nothing, because the issue of jurisdiction is the master when it comes to legal matters.
Yeah.
Jurisdiction is everything. Look at the matter that originated in Anambra that they took all the way to Brinin Kudu the other day in Jigawa State. Yeah. Forum shopping. Took it all the way. At the end of the day, jurisdiction stepped in. And that matter was justifiably dismissed. We are waiting to see whether the NJC will punish some of the lawyers who do these funny things.
Yeah. And you wonder if these things are done deliberately.
Many times, just to waste the time of the court, lawyers do some of these things deliberately. Because I don't know how a lawyer will not know, for example, that a court in Brinin Kudu cannot entertain a matter that originated from,
say, Akwa Ibom.
Akwa Ibom or Anambra, as the case may be.
Emeka, again, I talked about internal democracy amongst the parties, which will help our democracy. We say at 62, well, unbroken 22, 23 years, our democracy is still fledgling. We're in trouble, or so it seems.
Well, the point is that we, like you said, we cannot leave politics to politicians. Nigerians must be vigilant. Nigerians must ensure that they hold everybody in one public office or the other to account. In this instant case, it's very clear that the lawyers to Baba Yemi actually misled him. They deceived him. They clearly deceived him. Because why would you, I mean, when the law states clearly, 14 days, you filed it on the 15th day, which is the second part of your action. Filed on the 15th day. The primaries where you claimed to have been produced as a governorship candidate, not covered by INEC. You know, there was one of the editions of Johnny's Hangout where we spoke with, is it Ademola Adeleke or something, you know, who was involved in the amendment of the Electoral Act.
Yeah. Okay.
And one of the things he said was that the issue of INEC observing primaries had been changed from shall to must. So, which meant, under this Electoral Act, INEC
has to be there.
Has to observe primaries approved by the NWC and NEC of the party. So you cannot just wake up somewhere and organize and sit with some people, organize primaries, and declare yourself as a candidate. You see, so it's one of the beautiful things about this amended Electoral Act, that we are now drilling down to the critical points necessary to sustain democracy. Very, 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 very good. So I think he will learn a lesson. He and other politicians will learn a vital lesson, which is that you cannot run around the law. It's very clear. The Electoral Act is very clear. But for anybody who thinks, oh, by some chance, you can interpret the law differently from what is clearly stated in A, B, C, then you should know you will have a bad day in court.
All right. We have an Adewale reaching us from Osun State. Adewale, good evening to you. Welcome.
Interpret the law differently from what is clearly stated in then you should know you have to practice.
Okay. I guess we must go on. Jide, this trouble with politicians being bad losers is another side of the coin to look at.
You know, for Baba Yemi, he felt that because a court had ruled that the list of delegates used by Adeleke was defective, would propel him to victory. He challenged them because the ruling of the Ijebu-Jesha court was actually not set aside. But the truth is, the Adelekes were backed by the NWC of the party.
Okay.
Yes. You may say that they had the wrong list, but they were the right venue. In your own case, you had the right list, but you were in the wrong venue. It was a very interesting situation, involving both aspirants. But ultimately, Adeleke fulfilled the bulk of the
requirement.
Yes, and the judiciary saw it that way. And to put icing on his cake, his judicial enemies filed a case out of time. It's so easy for the court to take a decision in such circumstances. Once you failed to meet the time ceiling, you have nothing. You can't put something on nothing.
Nothing.
No, it's a nullity. Whatever action that you took is a nullity, and that's why the Supreme Court said it had no jurisdiction. That means his hands are tied. His hands are tied. They can't take any decision. It's not even a matter to entertain. Lawyers should know when to not proceed with a course of action. I mean, if Section 285, subsection 2 is clear on when you can file.
And it tells you, you get the impression that
appeal.
You get the impression that in politics, when there seems to be a crisis, you get the impression it was so created to appear that way, just to muddle the water.
I don't know, but for me, I think, yes, it was misled. It must have been told, look, we'll find a way to convince the judge. And it must have also felt that, look, it will get justice. When lawyers convince you about a course of action, you think that whatever happens, victory is yours. But there are other lawyers at the other end, and they're also doing their best to win for their client.
Yeah.
So he believed his lawyers sufficiently enough to want to proceed to the Supreme Court, but unfortunately, the matter was filed out of time. So that effectively denied him any form of victory.
All right. I'm looking at Nigeria 62 years, Jide and Emeka, 62 years, and our politics is still warped. And you get the impression, or ask the question, are we cursed?
Or are we the cause?
Or are we the cursed?
Well,
I don't know. I wonder.
We unfortunately, we had the 1966 coup, which in January 15, 1966 coup, and other coups, which did not allow democracy to grow. It did not allow, they did not allow democracy to flourish. And unfortunately, we have yet to get through that learning curve.
Yeah.
We're still
Emeka, yes.
trying to master the basics of democracy.
Emeka, yes, but from 1999 through to today, this evening, your child would certainly be in university.
You're talking of one child. We're talking of 200 million Nigerians.
Okay, all right.
And then a political class that believes it must have its way at all times. That's why I'm talking about the learning curve. If we hadn't had the January 15, 1960 coup, for instance,
Perhaps.
and the crisis at that time over parliamentary elections and all of that had somehow been resolved, I believe through the 70s, we would have got to
Stabilized.
a point where we would have stabilized. But right now,
all right.
we are still at cruising altitude. We
Okay.
have not stabilized.
But you are 62, don't forget.